Hi there, Plush here. So, I was originally just going to wait on uploading anything until I finished my very late at this point video for Pride Month. I am very behind on that, and I have just not had much motivation to get it done. But there is something that has popped up recently that I feel like is kind of important to talk about. By the way, if you are under the age of 18, please go to a different video. This video is going to be talking about some subjects that are not appropriate for anyone underage. Today I am going to be talking politics. You know, the very fun thing to talk about on any situation. I am a United States citizen who lives in the state of Michigan, and therefore, this bill that is attempting to be passed is one that is very relevant to me. This is one that has been kicking up a bit of controversy, and I'm going to take the time to go over the full bill and explain why I personally am not a fan of it, and kind of just give perspective as someone that is actually from the state that the bill is trying to be pushed through. This bill is the State of Michigan's House of Representatives Bill number 4938 from the year 2025. It is sponsored by multiple different districts, and it's under the category of State Other with the distinction of distribution of certain material prohibit creates new act. Basically what that means is prohibiting the distribution of a thing and creates a rule in place to do so. So far, as of this moment, the bill is electronically reproduced, meaning that it's available electronically for people to read. And it was introduced on 9/11 of all times. Like, I laugh at that, but this is kind of a serious one. So I have the PDF open, and by the way, I will provide links to both this page and to the PDF version, even though you will have access to both if you go to the first link. So let's begin. House Bill number 4938, September 11th, 2025, introduced by Representatives Shriver, Pavlov, Maddock, DeSana, Fox, and Warts, and referred to Committee on Judiciary. Basically saying these are the people who have brought it to the House. Now for the short thing at the start. A bill to prohibit the distribution of certain material on the internet that corrupts the public morals and prescribe penalties, to prescribe civil sanctions, to regulate commercial entities, to provide for the powers and duties of certain state and local governmental officials and entities, to create certain funds, and to provide for the distribution of money from certain funds. Basically, it's saying we want to prohibit a certain thing on the internet that corrupts morals, and we want to be given the money to do so. The people of the state of Michigan enact. Section 1. This act may be cited as the Anti-Corruption of Public Morals Act. Just for a bit of ease, I will just be calling it the Anti-Corruption Act, just because I do not want to read the whole thing, nor do I want to say the House Bill of Representatives 493-8, whatever it was. Section 2, as used in this act. A. Circumvention tools means any software, hardware, or service designed to bypass internet filtering mechanisms or content restrictions, including virtual private networks, proxy servers, and encryption tunneling methods to evade content restrictions. Basically saying circumvention tools, this is a definition. We're going through definitions. Basically, as read. So, circumvention tools, basically VPNs, proxies, Tor, anything like that, those are circumvention tools. B. Commercial entity means any business, institution, governmental facility, nonprofit, or digital service, public or private, that provides access to, hosts, sells, or otherwise handles content intended for users or the general public. Simple enough. C. Distribute means to provide, share, transmit, publish, circulate, exhibit, sell, or make available in any way online, whether by device via peer-to-peer, broadcast, or streaming method. Okay. Basically, if you have a way to give it to someone else over the internet. D, Internet Service Provider, means any entity that provides consumers with internet access and that must enforce content filtering under this act. Think of your Comcast and your AT&T and your other telecom companies. E, pornographic material, includes any content digital, streamed, or otherwise distributed on the internet, the primary purpose of which is to sexually arouse or gratify, including videos, erotica, magazines, stories, manga, material generated by artificial intelligence, live feeds, or sound clips. Basically saying any form of pornography is included in pornographic material, and they are including things that are not entirely internet adjacent, namely magazines and manga. But I guess this is specifically targeting those when they're on the internet. F. Prohibited material means, section I, except as provided in subparagraph I2, material that at common law was not protected by adoption of the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States respecting laws abridging freedom of speech or of the press, and A, is a depiction, description, or simulation, whether real or animated, digitally generated, written, or auditory, of sexual acts that includes any of the following. I, vaginal or anal intercourse. I guess I should just read these numbers. 2, fellatio or cunnilingus. God, that's a word. 3, masturbation. 4, ejaculation or orgasm. 5, penetration with sexual devices. 6, group sex. 7, bondage, domination, or sadomasochism. 8, acts involving bodily fluids for sexual arousal. 9, erotic autonomous sensory meridian response content, moaning or sensual voice content. 10, animated, virtual, or sexual activity generated by artificial intelligence. 11, depictions of characters acting or resembling minors in sexual content. 12, any other pornographic material. Just as a side note, I'm trying to read through most of this before I make a comment, but you have all of these different types of ways to describe pornography, and then you're just going to say all other types of pornography too. Cool. B is a depiction, description, or simulation, whether real, animated, digitally generated, written, or auditory, that includes a disconnection between biology and gender by an individual of one biological sex imitating, depicting, or representing himself or herself to be of the other biological sex by means of a combination of attire, cosmetology, or prosthetics, or as having a reproductive nature contrary to the individual's biological sex. I2, prohibited material does not include any of the following. A, material to be used for scientific and medical research or instruction. B, peer-reviewed academic content. That is a law reading, and I will come back to this specifically to FB, as is what it is, or FIB, FIB, Jesus Christ. But we will get there in a bit. Section 3. 1. A commercial entity, public institution, private actor, or internet platform shall not knowingly distribute or make available prohibited material via the internet to any individual in this state, except as provided in subsection 2. Any individual or entity that violates this subsection is guilty of a felony punishable by imprisonment for not more than 20 years or a fine of not more than $100,000 or both. 2. If a violation of subsection 1 involves more than 100 pieces of prohibited material, the individual or entity is guilty of a felony punishable by imprisonment for not more than 25 years or a fine of not more than $125,000 $500,000 or both. 3. An internet service provider providing internet service in this state shall implement mandatory filtering technology to prevent residents of this state from accessing prohibited material. An internet service provider providing internet service in this state shall actively monitor and block known circumvention tools. 4. In addition to the criminal penalties provided under subsections 1 and 2, a commercial entity or internet service provider that knowingly facilitates access to prohibited materials in violation of this section is subject to a civil fine of not more than $500,000 for each violation. 5. The promotion or sale of circumvention tools to access prohibited material is prohibited. Okay, that one's actually kind of funny. 6. An internet service provider providing internet service in this state shall block access to specific websites that host prohibited material on receipt of a valid court order. Section 4. 1. An internet platform, website, or social media service that is accessible by a user in this state shall update its terms of service and content policies to explicitly prohibit any hosting, promotion, indexing, linking to, or access of prohibited material. A policy developed under this subsection may provide for the implementation of filtering tools. An internet platform, website, or social media service that is accessible by a user in this state shall enforce such prohibitions uniformly across all users. 2. An internet platform, website, or social media service that is accessible by a user in this state shall implement content moderation tools such as A. Artificial intelligence-driven filtering technology for preemptive removal of prohibited material. B. Human review teams responsible for content evaluation and enforcement. C. A public reporting mechanism with a 2-business-day response time for law enforcement flagged content. D. Automatic account suspension or permanent bans for repeat offenders. 3. An internet platform, website, or social media service that is accessible by a user in this state shall provide an annual transparency report to the Department of State Police that details compliance, measures, and enforcement actions. 4. An internet platform, website, or social media service that is accessible by a user in this state shall implement filtering and moderation systems, such as systems that are capable of doing the following. A. Prevent access to prohibited material for all users. B. Use both automated and human moderation. C. Include real-time content scanning, keyword and metadata analysis, image recognition, and immediate takedown mechanisms. D. Operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week without user override. 5. An internet platform, website, or social media service that is accessible by a user in the state shall establish a trusted flagger program through which law enforcement and designated organizations have priority in reporting prohibited material. An internet platform, website, or social media service that is accessible by a user in this state shall respond to such flagged content within 2 business days and begin removal or disabling access procedures immediately. Law enforcement, certified civil agencies, and public institutions may report prohibited content with priority. As used in this subsection, Trusted Flagger Program means any program that must be administered by the Department of Attorney General. That one is a bit of a lot. That one's a lot to wrap your head around. I guess we'll have to go back over this one. Section 5. 1. The Department of Attorney General shall establish a special Internet Content Enforcement Division to audit, investigate, and enforce compliance with this act. 2. The special division shall do all the following. A. Investigate and prosecute violations of this act. B. Conduct audits of internet service providers and internet platforms, websites, and social media services to ensure compliance with filtering and content restriction requirements. C. Coordinate with federal and international law enforcement to remove access to prohibited materials on the internet by residents of this state. I actually think I do need to go back over this one. D. Manage a public reporting system through which residents of this state can submit complaints regarding violations. E. Issue legally binding orders that require internet platforms to remove non-compliant content within 2 business days of notice. F. Conduct regular compliance training and issue guidelines to internet service providers and internet platforms. G. Prepare an annual compliance and enforcement report. The report required under this subdivision must be submitted to the governor and legislature. 3. An internet platform, internet service provider, website, or institution must comply with a takedown order issued by the Attorney General or a designated enforcement division under subsection 2E within 2 business days of notice. As used in this subsection, business day excludes weekends and official state or national holidays. 4. An internet platform, internet service provider, website, or institution that fails to comply with subsection 3 is subject to a civil fine of $250,000 per day of delay. 5. The special division created under subsection 1 must be staffed with digital forensics analysts, legal experts, cybersecurity specialists, and investigators. 6. A fund is created in the state treasury to prevent the distribution of prohibited material via the internet to residents of this state. That's gonna go well. 7. The state treasurer shall deposit money and other assets received from civil fines collected under this act or from any other source in the fund. The state treasurer shall direct the investment of money in the fund and credit interest and earnings from the investments to the fund. That one kind of hurts my brain. 8. The Department of Attorney General is the administrator of the funds for audits of the fund. Okay. The Department of Attorney General shall expend money from the fund on appropriation only for the cause of administration and enforcement of this act and for any costs associated with the administration of this act. Enacting Section 1. This act takes effect 90 days after the date it is enacted into law. Enacting Section 2. This act does not take effect unless House Bill number blank, request number HO63 or 3698 apostrophe 325 of the 103rd legislature is enacted into law. I assume that this blank spot here is supposed to be the bill number up top, but oh well. That is the end of the bill. So now let's go back a bit and actually talk about some of the stuff a bit more in depth. So, of course, outside of some of the other things that are in here, basically, TLDR, if you want to know, the bill itself is a bill attempting to restrict access to anything deemed pornographic towards anyone on the state of Michigan. If it's considered pornographic, you can be fined legally thousands of dollars for any infractions that you do at all. This is a bit ridiculous already because, like, really? You're going to try to stop pornography? It's under the guise of what did they call the name of the bill again? They have this named as the Anti-Corruption of Public Morals Act, meaning that this bill, to put it like simply, is the flagship of moral grandstanding to police the internet and pretend that you are in the right over it. The only people who think that pornography is a degradation of morals, to put it bluntly, are the hyper-Christians that are already doing awful things behind the scenes anyways. Maybe that's a little bit inflammatory. I should probably say that's alleged, but I'm just going to say as how I see it. This bill, just from the basis of what it's trying to do, is moral grandstanding, trying to claim that pornography is degrading the morals of our societal fabric, and is trying to enforce people to go to jail if you happen to have a piece of pornography on any device. That could be your phone, that could be your computer, and it's also trying to have websites and your ISP to help police it. A lot of internet service providers are not from the state of Michigan, but do business in the state of Michigan. So you got big corporations like Comcast, AT&T, and all of that who are internet service providers who are based in different parts of the US. They would still have to specifically try to enforce these rules on Michigan-based customers. Basically, unless they intend to make a service that will specifically block Michigan like their Michigan branches from accessing certain content, it's very likely that this stuff will either be fought heavily against by ISPs, or the ISPs will join and will put this nationwide just so that they don't have to deal with it. I actually do bet on the former, but that's just kind of my personal thought on it. Pornography as a whole is a huge thing on the internet, and it's going to be hard to ever, like, get people to not look at it. I'm not much for pornography myself. I am very ace, but that is something that is just going to be a thing that people want. This is something that is probably liked about as much as booze in the 1920s, and we all know how that went. So now let's get to the elephant in the room, which is going to be talking about Section 2 FIB, which is in Section 2, it is definitions. Section F is explaining what prohibited material is. I is telling us that this is what all of it is, except unless it counts for whatever is in I2 or is protected by the First Amendment. And then B is a very interesting one. Is a depiction, description, or simulation, whether real, anime, digitally generated, yada yada. This is all saying if you do not conform to your gender expectations, you are prohibited material under this act. A lot of people have, of course, pointed out the obvious of this being very much an anti-trans bill, because it explicitly says that basically if you depict yourself in any way that is not your assigned biological sex, you are against the law here. A little bit of a spoiler for my upcoming video for Pride Month that is late, but I am not one that you would see as gender conforming. By goodness gracious, I am a plushie toy on the internet. Plushies are not usually male or female. Do I look like I am specifically male or female? I am a toy. Let's not forget either, this isn't just trans people that would be hit by this. It is saying that any depiction or simulation description of just a disconnect between biology and gender is not allowed. You can't talk about trans people. You cannot think about trans people. You cannot talk about, maybe if you're a guy, trying out makeup for a day just because you want to. Cross-dressing, not allowed. If you're not wearing a dress that is a dress enough, you are too manly if you are a woman, and therefore you're also hit by this. Are you a guy with long hair? That's not allowed. You are going to get fined thousands of dollars if you show that on the internet. This is bad. This is very bad. And it doesn't just affect trans people. It'll also hit people who are maybe a bit gay or any other part of LGBT who don't present as hyper-masculine if they're male or hyper-feminine if they're female. And I'm saying born as male, born as female for those. We're not even going to get into the specifics of how this also is open enough to where, while we don't have anything that specifically states that you have to be male loving female or female loving male, this is saying anything that is a disconnect between biology and gender. And we all know that a lot of Christians see being gay as very feminine in nature, or if you're a lesbian, that's very man of you. You should not be doing that according to them. And so even though this may be a bit more targeted towards, blue hair and pronouns, this is also going to affect anyone in the LGBT in general. And even if you're straight, this can affect you as well. If you're a straight cis guy, but you like having long hair, nope. You gotta trim that, gotta chop it off. That having long hair is feminine. Don't you remember? Oh, do you like painting your nails once in a while? Nope, not allowed. And then same with like females, women. If you are born female and, you wear like, t-shirt and jeans, that might, who knows, that might be a bit too manly. You're supposed to be in skirts and bikinis. Now, I might be kind of playing it up and exaggerating a bit, but you gotta look at laws and bills like this in the most exaggerated ways, because these terms, while being specific, are able to be taken and placed in the most, like, in any way possible. You gotta think of it how it would be applied in just about any situation. And this section specifically, it'll literally affect everyone. That is not the, at least everyone that is not the generic cis white family with 2 kids and American dream, whatnot. Likewise, god dang, you're trying to make it a felony. A felony for having a piece of pornography. Cool. I should also note, in the section describing prohibited material and explaining what is pornography, there are some things in here that are not pornography but are usually linked to kink. Namely, section A7, bondage, domination, or sadomasochism. Newsflash, bondage, domination, and sadomasochism, while often being linked to kinks and fetishes, are not pornographic in nature. I don't know if you know this, but some people just like whips and leather. Stuff like that. Especially bondage and domination. We've seen that sort of stuff appear in, kids' media. You ever seen the Powerpuff Girls? There's a little bit of dominatrix as a villain. That's not allowed on the internet if you're in the state of Michigan. In fact, apply that to every single cartoon and TV show and movie that has had cross-dressing, whether it be because of a plot or just because. Whether it be plot relevant, whether it be a joke for or against trans people, those are not allowed. In fact, those of you who hate trans people should also be against this, because depicting a trans person in a way you are making fun of would also be disallowed, because that's still a depiction of someone who has a disconnect with biology and gender. If you're making fun of them, you're still depicting them. Therefore, that would not be allowed here. They also made sure to put in some types of pornography that people would actually be against, such as section 11 here, depictions of characters acting or resembling minors in sexual contexts. Most people are not exactly going to be defending this section, because who would if they're not like a predator or pedophile? Of course, no one wants a minor in sexual content. Lolly and Shota content is bad. There is, of course, a case to be made that, acting as minors is a little bit borderline, but for the most part, most people are not going to bat an eye on this part, and that's how a bill like this is able to get any traction. People will focus on everything else and not focus too hard on the parts that are going to affect others. Another thing is a lot of internet platforms, websites, and social media services are not based in Michigan. Most of them are going to be based in California. And unless, again, they specifically set up mechanisms to block specifically Michigan customers, which I guess is possible, there is no way you're going to be able to enforce this unless you go to the state of California and sue the state of California for allowing one of their companies to do something that your state, my state, I guess, does not allow. So unless the state of Michigan intends to start suing other states just because they have websites that will not stop providing services, that's not going to happen. Pornhub did actually stop providing service to Texas, so there is a chance that websites maybe do comply. We'll see how that goes. another thing I need to note, so this part here, Section 5C, coordinate with federal and international law enforcement to remove access to prohibited material on the internet by the residents of this state. This is a state bill that we're talking about. This is only a statewide law if it were to go into action. So expecting the federal government to help you against corporations and all that in other states is a bit of a stretch. This is not a federal law. This is a state law that you're trying to do. This is about the same as a state that doesn't allow marijuana trying to have federal authorities help them with stopping marijuana in another state. That is not going to happen. And if you think it will, you are stupid. I'm just going to say it. There is so much wrong with this bill, and if you are in the state of Michigan, please contact your district representative. Tell them to not support this bill. Explain to them how it is a diversion from the issue. It does not protect kids, it does not help morals. It is simply trying to get brownie points with the current federal leaders and is nothing more than an attempt to look good while doing nothing of value. To all of the district sponsors here, your names are public. You should feel shame in bringing this forward. That is all that I have to say. Thank you for watching.